Okay, Rabbi Say, this is class 4 on the Maamar, Beshah, Sha'ala, Meisha, Lamorim, Tafshin, Chafhei. This Maamar is not an easy Maamar. And the reason we've had 3 classes already, because 2 classes were entirely introductory. The first 2 classes we didn't read a single word, except perhaps starting the Maamar's pasuk in the beginning, is symbolically, officially. The first introduction was all about the idea of Yisrael al b'machshava, that everything in creation begins with a yid, neshama b'guf. And now that's the basis for all of Seder Ishtalshalos. Even though a Jew is the last thing to emerge, to exist, a yid physically on this physical earth, learning physical Torah, doing physical mitzvahs and learning Torah in a physical body, that's the source of the whole of Ishtalshalos which comes before. The second class, which was a very important class, I introduced you to the terms Pnimius and Chitzonius, which appear in our text in Perek Tes, in the first paragraph of Perek Tes, and perhaps later on also. What's ironic about the use of the terms Pnimius and Chitzonius is that it's entirely counterintuitive. The difference between Pnimius and Chitzonius, in Balabatish, in convention, is that Pnimius means a deeper and a finer level, and Chitzonius means a shallower and a more basic level. The way Pnimius and Chitzonius play out in this Maamar is the exact opposite of how you would perceive it, expect it. Chitzonius is, so to speak, proverbially speaking, where the Eibishter creates the world. On the level of Chitzonius, where the Eibishter creates the world, there's world, there's a ratzon for Sfiris and Eilemis and so on. Pnimius is how the world, once it exists, impresses itself upon the Ein Sof and inspires a kamayim aponim leponim. That the world which exists by the Eibishter's creation shows its face to the mirror, to the plainness of the water, which is the Ein Sof, Atik. And the Sfiris, which are shown to the Pshitas of Ein Sof, are impressed upon the Ein Sof and then radiated back from the Ein Sof to worlds. That's Pnimius. Now the Rebbe, in a footnote, 43, makes it clear that these are not 2 stages in creation. They happen simultaneously. But there are 2 levels of depth. The Chitzonius level is the world that is created without any kind of halos man, any kind of inspiration from below, isarusa delatato. And the Pnimius means once the world exists, when creation exists, once Atzilus exists, once man exists, or the Matachna exists, and he raises himself up and touches the Ein Sof, the Ein Sof gives him back a mirror image of himself. But the mirror image of himself that the Ein Sof gives back to the Adam Ha'elyon and to the Adam Ha'tachtin, who looks into the Ein Sof, is deeper than the Esesphiris as they are in the Pshitas of the Ein Sof. In other words, the creation by itself has form. The creation then impresses upon itself upon the Pshitas of Ein Sof, so the Pshitas of Ein Sof should come into form. But when the Pshitas of Ein Sof has form impressed upon it by the already existent world, what it gives back is Sphiris that are in a total state of Pshitas. And if you remember the second class, I went into a whole discussion about Eidos Pshutim and Eidos Mitziyarim, and I made the point that in this Maamar, the degree of Pshitas and Sphiris that the Rebbe is going to be discussing, which is a consequence of the Kamayim Aponim Leponim, the Adam Ha'tachton reflects itself against the Adam Ha'elyon, and the Adam Ha'elyon refers itself against the Pshitas of Ein Sof. And the Pshitas of Ein Sof is imprinted with the tzir of Sphiris and then radiates it back. Those Sphiris in Oyer that radiate from the Pshitas of Ein Sof, from the process called the Kamayim Aponim Leponim, are the most posheter, is the greatest kind of Pshitas and the tzir of Sphiris that's possibly imaginable. And that was more or less what we discussed in the second class. Last class, we learned a bunch. Yeah, we started Perek Daled. We learned all of Perek Daled, all of Perek K, and all of Perek Vav. And what we learned in this class basically is that there are 4 levels. And I'm going to first say the 4 levels from the top down, from the highest level to the lowest level. And then I'm going to repeat them a second time from the bottom up, just for the purposes of clarity, okay? From the highest level to the lowest level, the 4 levels are the idea that Yisrael olam b'machshava, that's number 1. How literally in Atzmos Hamusim, the Eibishter himself, before he had any thought about creating a world, there was an imprint of a Yid. Not the neshama of a Yid, but the neshama beguf of a Yid. How a Jew in this physical world does physical mitzvahs and learns Torah in the physical world. That is impressed on the pshitas of Atzmos Ein Seif. And that initial impression is the basis for everything that unfolds in Seder Ishtalshalos subsequent to that. So the highest level, how is in the Eibishter himself, how Yid is impressed. The second level is the concept of Ein Seif, the Kveyacha from the Eibishter, who is called Moed, a source for light. There is Oyer, there is light, and the light is a reflection of the source. It's called Oyer Me'ein HaMoed, a light reflection of the source. And since the source, since HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Achtas Pshut, is absolute oneness, and Posher B'Tachas Pshut is absolute plainness, and so on and so forth, the Oyer, which is an expression, the Oyer, which is a dveikus, which is a revelation of the Moed, is as plain as the Moed itself. Just as Kveyachal and Hamsham himself, there is no definition whatsoever. In the Yedid Seif, there's no definition. This second level has nothing to do with Sfiris at all. Then there's a third level. The third level is the idea that the Eibishter has a machshava v'ratzon for elements. The Eibishter is planning to create worlds. And in as much as the Eibush is planning to create worlds, he plans for the creation to operate in a way of Isarusa de Latata, Isarusa de Liela. That what we do in this world should touch him and get him to respond. The law of causality, right? Of cause and effect. In the physical world, laws of cause and effect work because the cause and the effect are the same. More or less. They're both physical in the same time, in the same space, the same basic matter. And therefore, when they interface, when a cause and effect interact, they have an inverse, an equal and opposite effect on one another. When you're talking about the Eibishter world, there's nothing we can do that can in any way move him. If he doesn't want to be moved. And the third level is the level where the Eibishter chooses to be moved. On the level where the Eibishter chooses to be moved, there is no world. There is simply a decision that his Ein Seif should be affected by world. Says the Rebbe, this idea that the Eibishter makes a decision that the Ein Seif should be affected by world already means that in the Ein Seif there is the beginning of what will be world later. And that's the third level. So to repeat and clarify, the second level is Ein Seif as it is by itself. Before that, Machshav. And Ein Seif as it exists on that level has nothing to do with Sfiris at all, because it's Ein HaMoed. Then there is the Machshava v'Ratzon b'Kadosh Baruch Hu, that what we do should touch him and get him to respond, react. Isarusa de Latata, Isarusa de Liela, Halo Asman. And the idea that the Eibishter wishes that what we do should touch him, affect him, and get him to respond based on the laws of cause and effect means that even before we do anything, before we touch him, and before we are a cause that's going to create a reciprocal effect in the Ein Seif, there is already the possibility for that effect to take place. Or as the Rebbe says it in the Maamar, by that machshava v'ratzon, he makes that the pshitas of the Ein Seif and the world are both considered oisei hasug, the same category, the same world, the same level. That's the third level. And the lowest level, of course, is when the world actually reflects itself, impresses itself upon the Ein Seif. And when the world reflects itself upon the Ein Seif takes on the tzir, takes on the form of the spheres, of the essence spheres that exist in the world. And those are the 4 levels. The highest level is how a Yid is one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The second level is a Lakus, where the worlds have no effect and no influence and no bearing whatsoever. The third level is the same Ein Seif, but when the Eibishter decides that what we do should touch him, and therefore the Ein Seif becomes Be'esei Asug, that we should be able to touch him. And the fourth level is when we actually touch Ein Sof and impress upon the Ein Sof as a Sfiras HaGnuzos. Now, I cannot resist disclosing secrets because I'm a teacher and my job is to communicate the Maamar in a way which will be maximally helpful to you. So I'm just going to tell you now, and I don't think this is going to come up in today's class, it'll probably be in the next class, but it may come up in today's class, depending how the timing goes, that we're going to discover that the fourth level, which is the way we impress Tzir on the Ein Sof, so that the Ein Sof should have the impression of Sfiras, which comes from the world, which is technically lower than the third level, because on the third level, all there is the Eibishter's will and thought that what we do should touch him. We're going to find out that the third level and the fourth level are going to be Chitzonius and Pnimius respectively. In other words, the higher level, the way the Eibishter wills that what we do should touch him, so that the Ein Sof goes into the criteria that's called Ma'aseh Asug, that's Chitzonius. And the actual impression of the world on the Ein Sof, that in the Ein Sof there should be Sfiras, which first are impressed upon the Ein Sof, and then the Ein Sof radiates back into the world, that's going to be Pnimius. In other words, the lower level is going to be higher than the higher level. That's how this Maamar is going to spin. And the Rebbe is going to explain it. So it's very, very edel. And this will be learned in the last class. 4 levels. Now, as I told you, I'm going to repeat the same 4 levels a second time, but now I'm going to go in the reverse order, from the lowest to the highest. The lowest level is called Hakamayim Aponim Leponim Ken Leiv Adam Al Adam. That Adam Atachnim means a physical world. Doesn't only take from Adam Ha'elyon, which means Atzilus. Adam Atachnim means a physical Jew. Does not only take from Adam Ha'elyon, which is Atzilus, but actually gives back. And what he gives back is an impression of himself in the Esesfiris of Atzilus. This is called Kein Leiv Ha'adam. Kein Leiv Ha'adam, Kein Leiv Adam El Ha'adam, that the Adam Hatachtain impresses himself upon the Adam Ha'elyon, so that in the Adam Ha'elyon there should be an impression of an Adam Hatachtain, of a human being down here in this earth, so that what we are down here should be reflected in what Atzilus is. And then accordingly there is also the Kamayim Aponim Leponim, that the Sfiras of Atzilus impress themselves upon the Pshitas of the Ein Sof, so that in the Pshitas of the Ein Sof there's a concept of Esesfiras, which is called Esesfiras HaGenuzos. That's the lowest level. The level higher than that is where the Eibishter wills and thinks that the Ein Sof, which is by itself Poshet, should be subject to being impressed upon from Kamayim Aponim Leponim and from Leiv Adam Al Adam, that what we do should impress upon the Ein Sof, and the Ein Sof should reciprocate. It's the will of Hashem that what we do should touch him. The third level, from the bottom up, is the level of Ein Sof where Hashem doesn't will anything in the Ein Sof, and the Ein Sof therefore has nothing to do with the worlds at all. And then of course the highest level is how in Hashem there is actually an imprint of a Adam HaTachton, not of Adam Ha'elyon, but of a physical human being. And now let's learn the Maamar. We're going to start with Perek Zayin. Ubiyar ha'inyan, says the Rebbe, I want to explain the Gimel Madreges Hanal be'ein Sof shalamaylim esesfiras HaGenuzos. We have 4 levels, but the lowest of these 4 levels is the level of the Esesfiras HaGenuzos, how the worlds impress themselves upon the Pshitos of the Ein Sof, and the Pshitos of the Ein Sof gives back Sfiras in Oyer. That's called Esesfiras HaGenuzos. Higher than that, there are 3 levels. Number 1, the lowest of those 3 levels. And the Rebbe goes backwards from the bottom to the top, like I did in my second version. Once Hashem has a will, that there should be an ability to affect the heavens and HaKadosh Baruch Hu through our inspiration from below. So the fact that Hashem decided that what we do should touch him, this is the second madrege. The idea that Hashem decided that we do should touch him is higher than Esesfiras HaGenuzos. Why? Because Esesfiras HaGenuzos is the way we touch him in fact. And when we touch him in fact, we impress upon the Pshitas of Ein Sof our tziyur of Sfiras. And the Ratzim, Sheyiyeh Tfis Makam La'alos Man, is only a potential, it's not an actual impression of Sfiras or form on the Ein Sof, it's just the possibility that the Ein Sof should be impressed upon. The The 10 hidden spheres, it's the form that is impressed upon the Ein Seif, al yedei, and the Rebbe says in parentheses and in italics, after the world touches the Ein Seif and the Ein Seif reflects back. When the Ein Seif reflects spheres back from the world's impression upon the Ein Seif, that's called as a sphere that's the lowest level. The second level is the idea that the Ein Seif is simply prepared or willed into being in a position that if and when we impress ourselves upon it, the Ein Seif will reflect us. That becomes the level which is higher than the sphere of That's the first level. Or if you want to count all four, it's a second level. And then higher than that, the way the Ein Seif is by itself, parenthesis, Lifnei aliyah rasna, now before the aforementioned will. And the Rebbe says, Shabadar Gezu, this second level from the bottom up, Ein Shayach Alo Asman, what we do doesn't touch at all. Because naturally there's no relationship between Ein Seif and world unless Hashem wills it. And then finally, 4 lines from the top of page, Kureish Pei Zayin, at the end of the line, V'atzma Seir Ein Seif, V'yachal Elkus itself, the Eibishter himself, Shesham Mushrish, Ha'oyin Da'alo Asman, which is the root basis for the concept of what we do should touch Ein Seif. Because Yisrael, all over Machshava, the physical Yid's Hitztairus, and his physical keeping of mitzvahs and studying of Torah are impressed upon the Pshitas of Atzmos, and that's the real source of the whole idea that we do matters to the Eibishter, and the Rebbe says, you want to study it further. There are 4 levels. The lowest level is Esesfiris Agenuzis. The second level is the Ratzon, that what we do should touch him. The third level is Ein Seif, which we cannot touch. And the highest level is Atzmos Amhus, where Yisrael all over Machshava. Says Rebbe, I want to analyze these 4 levels. And I don't know exactly how you could see that the Rebbe is analyzing all of these 4 levels. He's certainly analyzing the first one, the lowest one. And that's what he's going to dedicate a substantial amount of time to. The higher ones, perhaps he explains them in Siftes. We'll see as the Maamar unfolds. Zog der Rebbe, I'm now 5 lines into Perek Zayin, 5 lines into page Reish Pei Zayin, Yuv and Behegdim, says the Rebbe, I want to preface first to explain Eif and Hahelim, that's the Sfiras Agenus, is the concept that the 10 Sfiras that are called Gonos, that are called hidden and concealed and mysterious, are hidden. And there's 2 types of Genuzis, the Behelim, Yesh, Neshnei, Efan, and there's 2 forms of Helim. Now I'm going to pause right here. I'm going to stop right here. And I'm going to give you an introduction to the Sugi of Esesfiris Agenuzis. My source is a Maamar in Sefer HaMaamar Tafresh Samaches, which is called Karav Hashem L'chol Kedav. And similar, more or less, the same discussion you have in the Maamar of Avraham Zaken, which is in Tafresh Samach Vov. I just want to tell you now that what I'm going to tell you in my introduction, based on those 2 sources, is different in a serious way than what the Rebbe is going to explain here. The Rebbe is going to say something here which is inconsistent with the Karav Hashem Reish Samaches and the Avraham Zaken Reish Samach Vav, which of course is repeated by the Friedrich Rebbe Maimorim and so on and so forth. So first I'm going to tell you the classic version, the standard version. And then I'm going to tell you how what we have here is a little bit different. And if you look at footnote 49, you see the sources. The Rebbe brings ha'ara of his own in Seif Maimorim Taf Shin Ches, page 243, where the Rebbe discusses the alternative version as a Sfiras Agenuzis. And then, on the line before, he makes reference to the Derech Mitzvah Secha and to the Hemshech Mayim Rabim, which are in footnote 47. So let me start by telling you the classic idea of Esesfiras Agenuzis. Well, about simply speaking, what is the meaning of Esesfiras Agenuzis? The 10 Sfiras says they're hidden. And of course, the concept of hidden is that today it's hidden, tomorrow it's revealed. Hashem creates Sfiras. Hashem creates what we call in our culture mides, attributes, character traits, that according to Kabbalah exist lamaila. Hashem kvayachal in the Me'elyin, in Atzilus, in Sfiras, has not just the nifal, but the pu'ula, has midas, has kelim. And accordingly, there's a concept of midas in Elikus, in the Eibishter. There's chokhmah, there's chesed, there's bina, there's gevura. Of course, all of these issues are very sensitive and controversial and complicated, but that's the basic idea. That in Elikus, there's Sfiras. So in Atzilus, there are Sfiras Agluyas. The 10 Sfiras are revealed. What does revealed mean? You see distinct midas, you see distinct tziyurim, you see distinct forms, or to use a simplistic metaphor, which is often so quoted in Hasidus as well, you see different colors. The level of Sfiras Hagluyais, revealed Sfiras, would be the idea that says in the Sefer Yetziris, Kishalheves Hakshura Begacheles, that you have a coal, and the coal is like a keli, and you blow on the coal, and when you blow on the coal, a flame emerges, and the flame which emerges from the coal and dances on top of the coal would be the mashal for oir. The gachelas, the coal itself, will be a mashal for keli, and the shalheves, the flame which you see dancing on the coal, will be a mashal for oir. And when the coal is impressed upon to reveal its oil, its flame, shalheves akshura begachelas, that the flame is dancing on top of the coal, that's a mashal for the spheres hagluyis of Atzilus. But higher than the spheres of Atzilus, the way you have the spheres are hidden. And in those Maamarim, there are generally 3 levels, and more specifically a 4th level. And there are mishalim for each of the 3 levels, from lower to higher. The mashal for the lowest spheres of mashal for the lowest level of Eses spheres Saganuzis is shalheves shebetecha gacheles. When you have a coal and you don't blow on it, the flame is hidden inside the coal, so you don't see any fire, you don't see any light, you just see a gleaming, a glistening, a radiating, a sparkling coal, and the flame, which is the idea of the light, which is hidden in the coal, is not revealed because no one has blown on it. So the flame, which can potentially be extracted from the coal, is gone, is hidden. But in order to get the fire out of that coal, doesn't take much effort. You blow on it and it comes out. That's the first mashal. The second mashal is a flintstone. Flintstone also have fire and heat. And it says the Lashon in Maamar Chsidis that a flintstone has no eish b'mitzias whatsoever, has no fire as an actual form at all, except that there's a concept in flint of choym k'tzas, a little bit of heat. I'm not sure exactly what this means, but that's the expression in the Maamar. In a flint there is no flame. In a flint there's no heat. A flint is a rock. And when you smash it, and you have to work very hard to smash it, the fire comes out. So the flame which is hidden in a coal is hidden in the kind of way that it's very easy for it to be revealed. All you have to do is blow on it. And the flame which is hidden in a flint is much more difficult to extract. You have to smash it, you have to work hard in order to get the flame out. So these are 2 levels of hidden light. Hidden, which is close to be revealed, that's the flame inside the coal, which is called in this Maimon Helem Sheshne B'tzi, is hidden in a way that the foam already exists. And the fire inside the flint, where you have to work much harder to get the fire out, because the fire is in a state of Helem Sheshne B'tzi, that has no form within the flint. Now, of course, the way these mishalim are developed is that a coal that has fire is limited. First of all, it'll eventually extinguish itself. And secondly, you put it into water, the fire goes out. A flint is theoretically infinite. And if you soak it in water for 1,000 years and you pull it out of the water and you strike it, you'll get fire. Because the fire in the coal is hidden, but hidden in a way that it's a metzias. The fire in the flint is hidden in the flint in such a way that it's not a metzias. So the lowest level of Esesiris Agenuzis is like fire inside coal. The higher level of Esesiris Agenuzis is like fire inside flint. And in Olamais, this is Nikudim, Taihu, would be, or Kese, which would be Kishalheves, Shabatei, Chagachas, flame inside a coal. That the light is taka hidden, but it's hidden in the Eifin of Helem Sheshne B'Mitzias. And the Nimshal for the mashal of a flint is Elam HaAkudim, which is higher than Teihu and Tikkun, where the spheres are so deeply hidden that the only way to extract them is through Hakoah, through smashing the flint. But above these 2 levels is a 3rd level. And the 3rd level is that there's no mitzias of genuzes in the mokir. Ein mitzias legenuzes. What does that mean? Obviously, the relationship between a red-hot coal and fire is much more imminent than the relationship between a flintstone and fire. But what they both share is that a red-hot coal is a potential for fire, and a flint is a deeper potential, but the flintstone is a potential only for fire. No one's going to say that from a flintstone you can get orange juice. It's a potential for fire. It is only that the way the fire is hidden in the gacheles, it's Helem Sheshne B'Mitzias, which is why it's a mashal for Kesa, which is close to Atzilus. And the Helem of the fire inside the flint is much more difficult to get out, which is why it's a mashal for Elas Firas of Akudim, but it's a flint only for fire. Above these two levels is a level which is higher than both of them. And that's the concept of a name, or shame or shemes, names. What does that mean, names? When you call Hashem a Chacham, you're calling Hashem, you're not calling Chachma. Hashem is one, and Hashem is plain, and Hashem is infinite, and Hashem is formless. And when you call Hashem a Chacham, you're speaking to that plainness. Because you know that the plainness of Hashem is infinite. In other words, the plainness of Hashem is not lacking everything, but it's including everything in a way of plainness. And when you call him Chacham, you're calling forward from within the pshitat of the Ein Sof the idea of Chacham. When you call him Chastan, or Giber, or Menatzeach, you are speaking to the pshitas of the Ein Sof that has no detail, no form. But by addressing him as a Chacham, or a Mavin, or a Chastan, or a Giber, you're calling forward from within the pshitas of Ein Sof that aspect. Now in the Ein Sof there isn't Chachma separately, and Chesed separately, and Bina separately, and Gvura separately. There's just pshitas of Ein Sof. But when you call it forward, you're reaching for the pshitas of Ein Sof to give you the aspect of the pshitas which is connected to Chachma, the aspect of the pshitas which is connected to Bina, the aspect of the pshitas which is connected to Chesed, and the aspect of the pshitas which is connected to Gevura. This is called Ein Mitzias Legenuzis. The Genuzis, the way the spheres are included in earth, there's no form whatsoever. The lower two levels, there is a Mitzias. The difference is only Helam Sheshne b'Mitzias, Helam Sheine b'Mitzias. The way the Esses spheres are in the pshitas of Ein Sof, they're not even Helam Sheine b'Mitzias. They're pshitas. And how the pshitas has everything within itself. And this is called Shemos. Hashem's names. Hashem is called Kel, which means Chesed, L'kim, which means Gevura, Havai, which means Teferes. Hashem doesn't have three parts. Hashem is one. But there's how in his oneness there's the possibility for Chesed, therefore he's called Kel. Possibility for Gvura is therefore called L'kim. The possibility for Racham, therefore he's called Havaya. But he's one. And that becomes the third level of Esesfiras Agnuzis. The lowest level of Esesfiras Agnuzis is called Helam Sheshne b'Mitzias al derech Moshel Shal Heves Hakshura b'Teicha Gachelas. The second level is Helam She'ene b'Mitzias, which is al derech Moshel Eish in a Tzurach Halomish, in a flintstone. And the highest Madrega is how you have only the Pshitas of Ein Sof, and the Pshitas of Ein Sof, although it has no character, no definition, isn't lacking anything, including the Inyan of the Esesfiras. It's called Esesfiras Agnuzas on the highest Madregas. Now to be sure, when you learn Samach Vov, and probably in Karev Avada Cholkeda, which I haven't learned in a while also, they split hairs, and they separate the word Shemois from the word Shem. Shemois Lashon Haba means names, many names, and Shem means one name. And the argument is that Shem is higher than Shemois. When you speak about Hashem having many names, even though when you speak about Hashem having many names, you're saying how the Pshitas of Ein Sof has a variety of characteristics. Even though the Pshitas of Ein Sof is Pshitas, the very fact that you say 10 names means that in the Pshitas there's the Pshitas of Tzir. While Shem, which means a single name, is even higher than that. That's called in Chassidus and Samach Vav, the Madrega of Sfiras and Kate, as opposed to Esesfiras Agnuzas. So you have 3 or 4 different levels of Esesfiras Agnuzas. The lower level of Sfiras Agnuzas is that's very easy to reveal, you have to blow on it. The higher level of Sfiras Agnuzas, it's harder to reveal, you have to smash on it. But it's a gnize, it's a potential for one koyach, only for Eish. And the highest Madreg is Shem, is how you call out of the Eibush of Pshitos, the Inyan of Esesfiras. These are 3 different levels in Esesfiras Agnuzas, which are discussed, like I said, in Karev Hashem Echol Kedav, in Tafresh Samach Ches, and Vavam Zak, in Tafresh Samach Vav, and another place. These 3 levels are explained in Koyches HaNefesh as well, in the human faculties. In order for me to properly explain to you these 3 levels as they exist in the faculties of the Nefesh, I need to give you one more piece of introduction. And that is, I want to introduce you to the 2 terms, Yecheles and Koyach, or Koyach and Yecheles. I translate Koyach in English as potential, and Yecheles as possibility. These 2 terms, Koyach and Yecheles, are called in the Maamar of the Rebbe Rashab earlier, they're called Noisei and Koilel. Noisei means how Hashem tolerates everything, and Koilel means how Hashem includes everything. So before I go on to tell you the three madregas of Keches HaNefesh, I want to first preface by speaking about the word Koyach and the word Yecheles. The difference between the word Yecheles, which is called in the Maamar of the Rebbe Rashab Noisei, and the word Koyach, which is called in the Maamar of the Rebbe Rashab Koilel, can be explained as follows. Let's use Kvayochel, the Eibishter, as a mashal, and the Neshama as a nimshal. Usually you would do it the other way, but in this case it's a little bit easy. Let's use Hashem as a mashal, and the Neshama as a nimshal. Hashem is everything. God Almighty, the Eibishter, is everything. The term that we use to denote everything is Ein Sof. Sfiris Ein Ketz. But Hashem is one. In Hashem there's no distinct aspect. There's no right hand and no left hand and right foot and left foot and so on. There's a pshitas. So although in Ein Sof and the Eibishter there is infinite possibilities, the Eibishter is one simple truth. So when you speak about Hashem and you say Hashem is a chacham, Hashem is wise, you don't really mean that God is wise, because wisdom is a specific characteristic that has distinct definitions and function and form and order and design. And Hashem doesn't have any of those things. Hashem is Ein Sof. When you refer to the Eibishter as Chacham, you simply mean to say that he isn't lacking what Chochmah has. Since Hashem is Ein Sof, you cannot say that Chochmah is missing, even though you cannot say that Chochmah exists there as a distinct aspect. Now if you multiply that times Ein Sof, there's Ein Sof possibility for Sfiris. And in the Pshitas of the Ein Sof, there is a Yachal, there's a possibility to each one of those Sfiris. When you say Hashem is a Chastan, you don't mean that he has Chesed, because Chesed is an attribute with definition and form and criteria. And the Eibishter is Pasha with Achas Pshitas. Hashem is absolutely one. When you say that in the Pshitas of Ein Sof there is Chesed, you simply mean that there's no lack of Chesed. That, what I just described, is called Yecheles. Yecheles is, the long name for Yecheles would be Einei b'mitzias b'bala Yecheles. In other words, there are Sfiris in Yecheles. Hashem's Yachal, Hashem's possibility is for Chochmah and for Chesed and for Bina and for Gvura. But there are no aspects. There's no actual Chochmah, there's no actual Bina, there's no actual Chesed, there's no actual Gvura. In the Yecheles of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Eibishter's possibility, there's simply no lack of these things. That's the higher Madreg. So on this level, you cannot say Hashem has Chochmah, Hashem has Chesed, Hashem has Bina, Hashem has Gvur. You could simply say he's not lacking those things. That's called Yecheles, the possibility for these Midas and Sfiras. Then there's a lower level, which is called Koyach. The translation of the word Koyach is a tool. There's three translations to the word Koyach: an energy, a potential, and a tool. Tools, as we all know, don't do anything. People do. Craftspeople do. A hammer, a screwdriver, a wrench, a brain, a heart, eyes, ears are tools that are at the disposal of the one who is in possession of those tools. But when you say koyach and you mean tool, there is the other criteria, the other rule. And the rule is that yeshne b'mitzias b'ba'al koyach. When you refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as having koyches, you mean that he has distinct aspects, distinct midos. Chochmah separately, and Bina separately, and Chesed separately, and Gevura separately. In the simplest of terms, this is talking about the Kelim. The Keli of Chochmah, the Keli of Chesed, the Keli of Bina, the Keli of Gevura. The way those Kelim exist, Kvayachal, hidden in the Pshitas of Ein Sof, they're called koyches, because they're actual aspects, tools, specific tools. And obviously, koyach has a much lower level than Yecheles. And philosophically, the way you would separate them would be to say this, that in Yecheles you say Hashem is not missing anything. And in koyach atzmi, which is called keches haklulam b'nefesh, you would say Hashem has everything. Not that he's missing anything, but he has, not that he's not lacking anything, but that actually has everything. Chochmah that's one with him, Bina as it is one with him, Chesed as it's one with him, and Gevura that's one with him. But on the word koyach, you're making the point, you're underscoring how he's not it's not possible for him to do whatever he wants, but that he actually has the potential for everything. A potential for Chokhmah distinctly, a potential for Bina distinctly, a potential for Chesed distinctly, a potential for Gvura distinctly. We call this Midas. The Midas, as they're included in Elokus, as they're bottled to the Eibishter. And that's the difference between the word Yocheles and the word Koyach. The word Yocheles means how the Pshitas of Ein Sof isn't missing anything. He has the possibility to do whatever he wishes. And the word Koyach is how Hashem has everything in every single one of these tools as they're bottled and included in the Pshitas of Elokus. Over here you say that there are infinite individual koyches that are all, so to speak, crunched together under the pshitas of Elokus. Yochelis would be the higher level, which I translated as potential, and koyach would be as possibility, and koyach would be the lower level that translate as potential. And like I said before, basically, simplistically speaking, koyches is the way kelim are included in Elokus. But you have this idea in Sfiris of Eid as well, but I'm going to leave that alone. So you understand the difference between the word Yechelis and Koyach Lamaila. Let's talk about a Neshama now. A Neshama is the same thing. Neshama is a piece of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A Neshama has tools. Chokhmah, Chesed, Bina, Gvura. In fact, the way the neshama comes into the guf, not only it has tools, it has locations for each tool, right? Chokhmah is the right side of the brain. Bina is the left side of the brain. Chesed is in the heart, and so on and so forth. The midas have distinct locations within the division of the body. But the way the koyches, the way these tools are included in the neshama, they're all collected, they're all together. They're in one place, so to speak, for lack of words, because they're not divided up by the division of the Ramach Evidim, which is Gidim of the body. But the way the tools exist in the neshama, they're koyches, they're individual tools that are, so to speak, crunched together within the pshitas of the nefesh. So it says in Chassidus that there's a number of different levels for these koyches. The idea that the neshama owns tools, which means that there's a harkava, that there's two things together. There's the pshitas of the nefesh, and the nefesh being in possession of tools. There's three levels, basically. The lowest level is the way the tools come into the body, and they are actually distinct. The middle level is called keches hane'alamim, the hidden tools, or keches hiyulim, the tools as they exist in potential. This is the way the tools exist in the pshitas of the neshama, but they exist in the pshitas of the neshama in a way that they're already been prepared to eventually go into the guf. And the highest level is called keches atzmiyim, the tools that exist in the nefesh on a level of etzem. And it's alternatively called keches hiyulim ha'atzmiyim, where the potential is in a state of etzem. The difference between the second level and the third level is that in the second level, which is called keches hiyulim or keches ne'alamim, the Maimorim say that the tools have what's called a hagabala klolis, a limit that's basic, a limit that's general. They're not really limited, they're infinite, but they have the beginning of limitation, have the possibility, the beginning of limitation. Now, if you're wondering how you can have a limitation in general, either something is limited or it's not limited. So the answer is, and I have to say this, but kids, I don't want to get caught up in this, is that the koychas hane'alamim have a neti, have a leaning. Like, for example, you have a mind. You can use your mind to learn anything. And then you have a chush. One person has a chush for refuah, for medicine. Another person has a chush for cheshbon, for mathematics. A third person has a chush for handasa or tchuna, which would be astronomy and engineering. Another person has a chush lahavdil for Torah. So your brain can learn anything, but you're predisposed to go in a certain direction based on your personality. So you're limited, but you're not limited. You can learn something which is outside of your tendency and your personality. It'll just be harder. Naturally, you're going to lean in the direction of what your tchunas hanefesh are. If your neshama is designed to go towards abstract, you'll get involved in abstract thinking. If your neshama is designed to engage in what is applied, you'll get involved into applied thinking. So you use your brain in a way that reflects your tendency, but that tendency doesn't absolutely limit your koyach. It just makes it go, it makes it lean in a particular direction. So the keches ne'alamim have a hagbola klolis. The highest level, keches atzmiyim, are basically how the tools exist in a state of infinity. They're individual tools, 10 individual tools, but they're included in the nefesh, they're crunched together in a way that's called akudim, akud b'kli echad, how the 10 becomes one, because each one of these tools exists in an infinite way. Now in Samach Vav, in the beginning of the Maamar of Sfartem, I think, the Rebbe Rashab says it's very, very difficult to understand this highest level of koyach. That you have individual tools, at the same time they're so bottled that as if they don't exist. This is two opposites. The Rebbe Rashab says it's very hard to understand this, but you must say that this madrega exists. And I'm not going to say anything more on the subject. You can look it up in the beginning of that Maamar, and it's discussed at length in Chassidus, like I said before, in Vav Rab Zaken Reish Samach Vav, and in Karav the Shem Chol Kerev Reish Samach Ches. So you have three levels of koyach in the nefesh. The lowest level of koyach in the nefesh is where the koyachas are in the guf. The higher level of koyach is the koyachas are not yet in the guf, but they've been prepared to go into the guf because they have a basic limitation, hagvala, klolos. And the highest level of koyachas are called koyachas atzmi, the way the tools are one with the nefesh, that even though you have 10, they're all crunched together into a one, so to speak. And above these three levels, there's the neshama itself. The neshama itself is called shemes, names. The neshama itself is the owner, is the possessor of the koyches. There's two things. There's the owner of the tools and the tools themselves. In the tools themselves, you have a atzmiyisdika level, you have a helam level, and you have a gili level. And above the three levels of the tools, there's the one who's in possession of those tools, which is the neshama itself. The neshama itself, which possesses the koyches on these three levels, this is the madrega of Yechelis in nefesh ha'adam. How in the neshama of a person is a level of pshitus, of infinity, which is like the pshitus of Elokus, that in this madrega there's no tools. You can't speak about tools being grafted, being murka, being riding on the pshitus of Elokus. All there is the pshitus of the nefesh, the plainness of the nefesh, and on the plainness of the nefesh lacks no thing. This is called shemes, the idea of a name. That before you call him by his name, all you have is pshitus, and when you're calling him by his name, you're triggering, you're touching how in the pshitus there's a possibility, not a potential. There's a yechelis, not a koyach for that particular midah and that particular sphere. So you have three levels of koyach, and above the three levels of koyach, you have the madrega of yechelis. And in nefesh ha'adam, this is kechas ha'giluyim, kechas ha'ne'alamim, which is also called kechas ha'yuliyim, and kechas atzmi, which is also called kechas ha'yuliyim ha'atzmim, and above that you have the infinite yechelis. Now in hishtalshalos, in spheres and in elames, Atzilus is the nimshal for kechas ha'giluyim, Keser is the nimshal for kechas ha'ne'alamim, and Akudim is the nimshal for kechas atzmim, and Yechelis and the Adam Kadmon is the nimshal for Yechelis. And there's different madregas. Adam Kadmon is nimshal for Yechelis. The way the Adam Kadmon is described is that there's something called Sheirish Neshama is the Gufas. You have only the Ruchnius of the Gashmius of the Spheres and Ak. And of course, hard. Adam Kadmon is the Spheres Agenuzis Lefnei HaTzimtzum, which is certainly Yechelis, and in this itself, there's the two madregas of Shemes and Shem that I mentioned before. In short, Estes Spheres Hagenuzis is the whole world. When you learn these two Maimorim that I mentioned a while back, Karav Hashem Echol Kedah from Tafresh Samaches, and Avram Zaken Tafresh Samach Vav, and the emissaries I'm remembering now, you also have it by Riches and Samach to Samach, Tafresh Nun Zayin. There's a number of levels of Esesir Sagnuzis. The lowest level of Esesir Sagnuzis is Kashal Heves Akshura Begachelis, flame inside a coal. But the nimshal for this in those Maimorim is Esesir in Kesed. The higher madrega of Esesir Sagnuzis is Eish Beshah Kachalamish, fire in a flint, which is like Akudim, Helam She'enim B'Metzias. And higher than both of those is the madrega of Shem Mois, how the Eibishter is one, how the neshama is one, and when you call the Eibishter's pshitos, Kvayachal, the pshitos of the nefesh, by a particular name, you're bringing forward that aspect of the pshitos. Now later on you're going to see, on the next page you're going to see that there's a difference between the mashal and the nimshal when it comes to shemes. It's not the same in the neshama there is in Elokus. But in the meantime you have all of these madregas. I hope I didn't confuse you by the arichis, by the elaboration that I just gave. But to get back to the Maamar, everything I shared until this point is the standard version, is the classic version. The lowest level of Esesfiris Agnuzis is fire inside coal. The second madrega of Esesfiris Agnuzis is fire inside flint. And the third madrega of Esesfiris Agnuzis is names in a nefesh. But this Maamar goes in a different direction. This Maamar disagrees with what I just said. And like I said to you, there's footnote 49, which is Mitzayin to Ha'oref and the Rebbe in Tavshin Ches, page 243, and also in Mayim Rabim, and in Derech Mitzvah Secha. They give another insight. And the other insight is predicated on a simple assertion. The assertion is that Ein Mitzias L'Genuzas. The Esespheres L'Genuzas have no reality, have no Mitzias, have no form, have no definition. And on that basis, the marshal of fire inside a coal is brought into question. The lowest marshal of Esespheres L'Genuzas is fire inside a coal. You blow in it, the fire comes out. You take the coal, you put it into the water, the fire disappears. Because the fire is actual, it's actual fire inside the coal. And in these alternative Maimorim, they bring into question this marshal. Why? Because fire inside a coal is Helam Sheyeshne B'Metzias. The fire is actually there. When you talk about Esespheres Hagnuzes, the argument is Ein Metzias L'Gnuzes. And on that basis, it's brought in those Maimorim a different idea. And the different idea is that there are no, so to speak, three Madregas Esespheres Hagnuzes, there's only two. The higher Madrega of Esespheres Hagnuzes is Shemes. The lower Madrega of Esespheres Hagnuzes combines two Mishalim to explain itself. It uses the mashal of fire in a flint to bring out to what extent the fire does not exist within the flint. And it uses the mashal of fire inside coal to bring out that there's actually fire, there's actually spheres in the pshitas of Ein Sof. In other words, instead of these two mishalim, fire in a flint and fire in a coal being two madregas, Esespheres Hagnuzes, they become two sides of the same mashal. And the reason this is done is because there is an assertion in some Maimorim that when you talk about Esespheres Hagnuzes, it's only true if there's no mitzias to the Gnuzes whatsoever. So you have two versions of a concept which is discussed at length in Hasidus. The 10 hidden spheres, which come, of course, the 10 before, 10 revealed spheres. In one version, the lowest level is fire inside coal, which is Helam Sheyeshne B'Metzias. And above that, fire inside a flint, which is Helam She'ene B'Metzias. And above that is the idea of Shemitz, which is Eine B'Metzias Klal, at all, as you'll see inside. And in other Maimorim, including the Maimor we have in front of us, we're going to have only two Madregas of Esespheres Hagnuzes. The lower Madrega of Esespheres Hagnuzes is going to combine the two Mishalim of fire inside a coal and fire inside a flint to bring out the two sides of Esespheres Hagnuzes. On the one hand, they don't exist at all. On the other hand, they do exist. And then the second Madrega is going to be the Inyan HaShemis. So we're ready to approach the Maimid, and basically we're learning the sugi of Esespheres Hagnuzes, the 10 hidden spheres, predicated on the assumption, as our Maimid assumes, that Ein Mitzias L'Gnuzes. Remember, this is going to bring us back to the 3 or 4 levels that we talked about earlier, but let's leave those 3 or 4 levels on a shelf in the meantime, and let's explore Esespheres Hagnuzes that are explained in this Maimid. So the Rebbe begins and he says, 5 lines into page Reish Pei Zayin, Yuvan Behegdim, to understand the 3 levels which are higher than Esespheres Hagnuzes. Halos man in atzmos, Ein Sof, which is posher b'tachas pshitas, and Ein Sof, which has a ratzon for that we should be able to influence him. We must understand the concept of oifin hahelem, the Esespheres Hagnuzes, the nature of the hiddenness of the 10 hidden spheres. So the discussion is not to explain the 10 hidden spheres. The discussion was to explain the quality of the hiddenness of the 10 hidden spheres. It says the Bereba, the behelem yesh nishteyefan. There's 2 levels of hiddenness. The lower level of hiddenness, the more actual level of hiddenness, is called the Helam Sheyeshne B'Metzias, where something is hidden, but even though it's hidden, it's already existent potentially. Like fire inside a coal. When you look at a coal, you don't see flames. But if you blow on it, they come out very easily. Although the fire which is hidden inside the coal is hidden and covered over by the stone of the coal itself, that fire is actual fire, or to say it in other words, it's actual heat. It's finite energy. In order to reveal it, from its hiddenness, it's not difficult. All you have to do is you blow on the coal and the fire emerges. This is called Helem, it's hidden, but Helem sheyeshne b'mitzias. Higher than Helem sheyeshne b'mitzias, there's a higher level, which is called Helem sheyeshne b'mitzias. There's a hiddenness, where the thing that is hidden in such a way that it has no form within what it's being hidden in. Kamei, for example, Eish shebetzorach halamish. Fire in a flintstone, says the Rebbe she'eni mitzias eish. Fire in a flintstone does not have any form of fire. V'rakeach eish, it's a tool, it's a possibility for fire, but the nature of this possibility is that it's not actual. V'haraya, soak a flintstone in water for 1,000 years, pull it out of the water, strike it, it'll make fire. Which is why the extraction of fire from a rock, from a flintstone, is like that. You have to smash it. It's tircha v'yegia. It's exertion and it's hard work because it's hidden in a way that has no mitzias. So you have two types of hidden. Hidden, where the thing that is hidden exists already in a hidden state. In hidden, where the thing that is hidden does not yet exist in an existential state. Continues the Rebbe and he says, "Ubekeches hanefesh," and in the faculties of the Yiddish and the neshama, who achiluk, it's distinction between keches and alama and keches haklulim benefesh, between hidden faculties and essence faculties. Keches hiyulium and keches hiyulium ha'atzmim, keches ne'alam and keches atzmim. What's the difference? Says the Rebbe, shahahelem the keches and alama. Every person has hidden faculties. Before you have intelligence in your brain, you have intelligence in your nefesh. Your intelligence, the way it is in your nefesh, is hidden. And it's called Chamekeach HaMaskal, the tool for maskal, for creativity and intellect. But the way your intellectual tool exists in your nefesh, and we call it Keach HaMaskal, it's Helem Sheyeshne B'Metzias. It's although what's hidden, it already has a form. And like I explained to you in my mashal, in my discussion, the form is that it has an atiyah, that although you're using your tool can be used, your seichel can be used to understand absolutely anything, but you have a predisposition, you have a leaning towards one kind of chachma versus another, tchuna, handasa, cheshben, refuah, and so on. So that natiyah close makes it a helam sheshne b'metzias. Higher than the madrege of keches ne'alamim is what's called keches atzmiyim. V'hahelem, the keches aklulim b'nefesh, the higher level, which is where the keches are one with the nefesh, the way the 10 becomes one, which is the Madrega of Akudim and the Nimshal. Like I told you before, this the Rebbe tries to explain, the Rebbe Rashav tries to explain in the Maamar of Sfartim at the beginning of Tafresh HaMachvov. That's Kemesei Keach HaSeichel, it's the tool of Seichel, Ha'ayuli, the way it's a potential Ha'atzmi, that's one with the Etzem Mamish. And there we say, Hu Helam She'ene B'Metzias. It's a hiddenness that has no form. And as I said to you before, the Koiches Atzmiyim are on the one hand Koiches, on the other hand Beligavul. The Koiches Atzmim on the one hand 10, on the other hand 1. And it's very difficult to understand this. The Rebbe Rashav himself says it's very difficult to understand this, but you must say that it exists. Mochrachim loima. So the Rebbe now makes his point. Helem, that's the Sfiris HaGnuzis. When you say 10 hidden Sfiris, and you say that the 10 hidden Sfiris are hidden, you mean Helem she'ene b'metzias, a hiddenness which has no form. So if as a Sfiris HaGnuzis means a hiddenness which has no form, the mashal of fire in a coal is cancelled. The mashal of koiches, hanelamim, hidden faculties, which have hakbala klolis, and are already the beginning of Gilui, is cancelled. So what in one group of Maimorim, Karav the Shemach Kerev in Samaches, and Avraham Zokin in Samachvov, and in other places as well, is the lowest madreg of Esesfiris HaGnuzis. The Rebbe says here, it's not Esesfiris HaGnuzis, it's the beginning of Gilui. Because when you speak about the 10 spheres above Atzilus, and you call them Gnuzes v'ne'alames, hidden away and hiding, if it's only true in as much as the spheres are part of the Ein Seif. But when you speak about hidden spheres that are not yet revealed, but they're no longer part of the pshittas of the Ein Seif, they've already begun to emerge and setting up the 10 revealed spheres, you can't call them Gnuzes. So in this Maimon, like I said to you, look in footnote 49, you see that the Rebbe says you use the 2 mishalim of flint and a coal not to represent 2 levels of Sfiras HaGnuzis, but 2 sides of the same madrega of Sfiras HaGnuzis. Based on the fact that in this Maimon, the criteria of Sfiras HaGnuzis is Ein Metzias HaGnuzis. When you say 10 hidden spheres, you mean that the 10 spheres are hidden because they're in the presence of the pshitas of the nefesh, or the presence of the pshitas of the Ein Seif. And any form in the presence of the pshitas of the nefesh, or the pshitas of Ein Seif, is completely obliterated, so to speak. Let's read it again. 2 lines and 2 words from the end of the first paragraph on page Reish Pei Zayin. When you speak about the 10 spheres, higher than Atzilus, and you call them Gnuzes V'nei Lames, who lefi she'includes Be'ein Seif, they're included in the Ein Seif. Al derech eskal keches benefesh, like the madreg of keches atzmiyim, as opposed to keches ne'alamim. And vehelen, the keches aklulim benefesh, the way keches are one with the nefesh, it's helam sheni b'metzias kanal. Like I said to you before, how the keches are infinite, and 1, 10, and 1, and so on and so on. So in this paragraph, we had 2 mishalim, but only one of them is appropriate for explaining as a Sfirus HaGnuzos. The 2 mishalim were fire and coal and fire and a flint, or keches ne'alamim and keches atzmiyim. And the first set of mishalim are cancelled. They're not keches, they're not called gnuzes because they're right at the beginning of Gilu. Only the mashal of fire and a flint and the mashal of keches atzmiyim is the mashal as a Sfirus HaGnuzos. That's how it is in this Maamar. So to summarize, after much to do and a lot of talk, the end of the discussion is that the lower madreg of Esses Sfirus HaGnuzos is like keches aklulim benefesh, is like fire in a flint. And then the Rebbe continues in the second paragraph and he goes to a higher level. And now the Rebbe is going to introduce us to the madreg of Yecheles. In the previous paragraph we had only one madreg of Esses Sfirus HaGnuzos, but it's the madreg of koyach, tools within the pshitas of Elokus, tools within the pshitas of the nefesh. So on the one hand, there's only the pshitas of Elokus and the pshitas of the nefesh. On the other hand, there's tools that are included in the pshitas of Elokus and pshitas of the nefesh. Yeshnei b'mitziyah is a ba'ala koyach, but they're completely bottled. And above this madreg of inigam helam she'eni b'mitziyah, this helam, which has no form, which we described in the previous paragraph as keches atzmiyim keches aklulim b'nefesh, says the Reb who eis mitziyah. There is a kind of a form. Elishamitzias shalei, the nature of the form, the way it's included in the nefesh and Elokus, is eshu makar l'mitzias. It's a source for mitzias. And what the Rebbe means by the word makar over here is not a makar korav, it means a makar rochik. Because a makar korav is a keich nel, not a keich atzmi. He simply uses the word makar to say that there is something specific here that's the basis for something specific that's going to be revealed later. For example, fire in a flintstone. But the whole point is that there's no fire flint at all. But a flintstone is a source of fire, not for water, not for orange juice. So although it's a keach atzmi, but it's a keach atzmi to something specific. And that already makes it a makar. Which is proof. The fact that the stone, which is called a flint, has a potential for fire specifically, is davanei atzur. It's a character within the flint. It's a specific characteristic within the flint. So koiches atzmiyim, which are considered a mashal for gnuzes, because they're klulim benefesh and have no mitzias, at least has mitzias in as much that it's a makar, at least has the mitzias in as much that it's a makar for a specific midah. Same is true in the second mashal, the faculties that are one with the nefesh, they're tools and not nefesh. That even though these tools are infinite, and therefore the 10 is one, like it explained in the beginning, but at least it's a tool in the nefesh. It says the Rebbe, v'loi nefesh, it's not nefesh itself. Moreover, you see, he uses the word kimoy. It's not a direct source of keches hagiloyim, but it's an indirect source of keches hagiloyim, because keches hagiloyim exist because keches atzmim exist. And therefore the Rebbe pushes the envelope up. And I'm going to repeat myself and, so to speak, reset ourselves. In the previous paragraph we talked about Esasirus Aginuz. And we asserted that in this Maamar there's ein metzias l'gnuzos. And therefore the mashal for fire in a coal and keches ne'alamim is not adequate. Only fire in flint and keches asmim is adequate. But at least there's a Metzias Babal Lakeach in this first mashal of Esesfiris Hagenuz. And therefore we have a second level, a second madrega of Esesfiris Hagenuzis. Hamoshal the Kechas Aklulim Benefesh al Esesfiris Hagenuzis. When we speak about the 10 faculties of the Nefesh as the one with the Nefesh, the 10 spheres are the one with ain't safe, in a way that they're completely bottled. Says the Rebbe, is Rak Esesfiris da Akudim. It's where the 10 spheres on the world of Akudim and not higher. Because Akudim is Eser, Okud, Bekliyachat, and the 10 becomes one. Ava Badarg is Esesfiris Hagenuzis Shalamal Mi Akudim, higher in the world of Akudim. And basically, higher in the world of Akudim is Adam Kadman is Ak. And of course, even higher than that is Eidin Seif. Shalifnei Hatzimtzum. Says the Rebbe, Ein Shayach Leimer Gam, Shehem Behelam, Sheni B'Metzias. You can speak about Esesfiris Hagenuzis, and you could say that Esesfiris Hagenuzis are in the category of Ein Metzias Hagenuzis. There's no form to the Esesfiris Hagenuzis. Not even in a Madrega of Helam Sheni B'Metzias. No, you're not even going to say that the faculties are so bottled that they lose their Metzias. They have no Metzias in the first place. Ela She'enam Metzius Klal, they have no form whatsoever. Kahalosha and Amuva become like the standard nusach is Ein Metzias Hagenuzis. There's no form to Hagenuzis at all. Now again, this Maamar insists that all levels of Esesfiris Hagenuzis is Ein Metzias Hagenuzis. But the first level of Metzias Hagenuzis is Keches Asmim, Keches HaKlulim. Tools are totally bottled. The second level of Hagenuzis is not even tools. As you see momentarily, this is going to be called the Madrega of Yechilis. Says the Rebbe, Kizesh and is Chadesh. The idea that there is an emergence, or a potential emergence, a possible emergence. But inyan the Esesfiris Hagenuzis, an idea of 10 hidden spheres, Hurak Yechilis. And again, we're going to translate the word Yechilis as possibility as opposed to potential. Hashem has infinite possibilities. No, if Hashem has infinite possibilities, how many possibilities does He have? The answer is, of course, He's possible infinity. But specific possibilities are part of the plainness of His infinity. Sheyachaliyah, so He can possibly do anything, and included in anything is also His Havas Esesfiris, this particular spheres of Chochmah and Chesed and Bin and Gvur and so on. And so long as He doesn't actually create individual character traits, individual faculties, which we call koiches, la yeshna metzias de spheres, there's no form of spheres, gam loy metzias de mocker le spheres. You can't even call them a source for spheres. And again, the way the word mocker is being used here is not the typical use of the word mocker. Because mocker usually means a mocker karav, a direct source. This is an indirect source. How indirect? The keches are in the level of etzem, but they're 10. Yochelis is not even a mocker. V'hamoshel al zeh, says the Rebbe, the moshel to explain Eser Sfiris Hagenuzis al madregas of Yechilis is mishem ha'olam, from a person's name. The zeh is chadish b'ha'olam al yesh yesh l'shem. A human being has a name, right? And of course, according to Chassidus, the name of the person is the chayus of the person. That name is a part of his essence. But there's nothing in the person that's the name, it's just the person. If and when someone calls him by his name, he's going to turn to those who call him. The idea that if tomorrow someone is going to call so-and-so by his name, he's going to turn, because his name is called. He turns to those who call him by his name. Maschila begins when they call him by his name. Before he's called by that name, there is no turning whatsoever. Your name, before anybody uses it, is literally you. And you're not going to say that there's two things, you and your name. The tools of Chochmah and Chesed are separate from you. But the idea that in your plainness there is a name, or there is a possibility for Chochmah and Chesed does not exist until it's called forward. Gamlei Meked Laham Shach, not even a source or an indirect source for being called forward. The only thing that changes by the virtue that you were given a name is Rak HaYechelis. That there's a possibility that someone will call you by your name and you'll turn. It could be drawn forward. The Nifna Lakeda Bishmei, they'll turn to someone who calls them by his name. So the Rebbe is giving a mashal. And the mashal is your name. When someone calls you Moshe, you turn and look, if your name is Moshe. Someone calls you Masha, you turn and look if your name is Masha. Before someone calls you by that name, there's no two things in you on your name, there's only you. And that's the Madrega of Yechelis, which is the higher level of Esesfiris Hagdozos. But this mashal will now be developed further. The mashal we just had is a person's name. The mashal of a person's name is going to be developed further by a concept which is called in Chassidus Shvachim. Shvachim. Praise. You'll see in the footnotes the Rebbe is mitzayin to Teirei and Vayechi and a lot of other Maimorim in Chassidus. They suffer of Teirei and Vayechi. But I'll give you the background. I'll tell you the standard source of how this idea develops in Maimorim Chassidus. Okay? There are Maimorim of Lag Boimer, famous Maimorim of Lag Boimer. Right? If you are aware, in Chabad, the niggin for Lag Boimer is not Bar Yerchoi or Omer Abakiva as it is in the ganze Welt. The niggin in Chabad for Lag Boimer is Hine Mate v'Manoim Shavasachem Gam Yochad, and there's several different agunim for this. Why? Why is the Chabad niggin for Lag Boimer Hine Mate v'Manoim? Because there's a Torah in Zohar connected to Hine Mate v'Manoim, which the Rabbeim connect very strongly to Lag Boimer. And it's a story. Zim, Nacha, the Yitzrach, Amal, the Mitre, once upon a time, they needed rain. And they came to Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai to ask him to daven for rain. And Rashbi saw them coming. And the Talmidei Rashbi saw them coming. Before they had a chance to ask for rain, the Talmidim of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai began to flatter him. They called him Shatz, they called him Shabbos, they called him all kinds of wonderful names. They flattered him. And Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai said Teira on the pasuk Hine Matei v'Manoim Shavasachem Gam Yochad, and it rained without any effort. And of course, the way the Maimonides Hasidus develop is they contrast Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is making it rain through Amiras Torah with the Mishnah Masechta Tainis, or Batchoni Hamagal making it rain through davening. That in the Mishnah in Tainis he davens once and it rains not enough. He davens twice and it rains too much, and davens 3 times and it rains correctly. And Maimonides Hasidus delve into the difference between making it rain through tefillah, that is strike 1 and strike 2, and only the 3rd time it's right, and making it rain through Torah, that it comes chatchila correctly. So you have Maimonides Hasidus that talk about Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai making it rain through Torah, and of course the Chiddush of it is that normally, we had a Maimon, we learned about this, an earlier Maimon we learned about this. Normally, only tefillah changes the Gashmi world, not Torah. The Maamar of B'Yitzkis of Tafshir Chavav, I think. And only Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai's Torah is like other people's tefillah, which is able to make a physical change in the world. Like the Gemara Altar brings in Tanya, B'Negei Rabba, that his Torah was a Binyam Mispala Kol Hayim, has a physical change in the physical world. But one of the things which the Maimonides Hasidus analyze when they bring this story and this Teira and Hine Matev is what was the significance of his friends, his Talmidim flattering him. We know Chanufa is a terrible midah, right? Phony flattering is a midah ra. The Chazal say that a person who's a chinif is ein yerei pnei hashchina. So why would Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai's Talmidim flatter him? And of course the answer is they weren't flattering him in the superficial sense, attributing to him characteristics which he did not have. The purpose of the flattery was to reveal hidden potentials. Rabbi Shimon was a tzaddik, and in his neshama there were unbelievable koyches. But it was possible that the koyches in his neshama were so deeply hidden that he didn't know he had them, or it couldn't bring him forward. So his Talmidim called him by those names, and by calling him by those names, they were bringing forward those possibilities, those potentials from a hidden state to a revealed state. And they were empowering him to be able to say Torah in such a way that it should cause terrain. So when they called him, let's say, Chacham or Chastan, whatever the particulars were, they brought out from the hiddenness of his nefesh these possibilities, and by bringing out of his nefesh these possibilities, it was able to affect Rabbi Shpi that he should say Torah and it should rain. And then, of course, Maimonides Hasidus go on and they say that this is not only true by a person, it's true by the Eibishter as well. That when you flatter HaKadosh Baruch, when you call him Chacham and Chastan, you're not chanfening him, you're not manipulating him in a way which is inappropriate. you're revealing a hidden possibility which is so hidden that until you would call it, it would never come out. In other words, the way the Eibishter designed our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we have to aroisruf, we have to call out of the Pshitas of Elokus certain brachas that should reach us in a way that is for us a bracha. And the beginning of that is called a shevach, to praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Chassidus goes on the flattery of Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, and we explain the purpose of this flattery was to bring out a hidden potential or possibility from a hidden state to a revealed state. And the same is true by the Eibishter. But then the Maamar Chassidus continue and say one more thing. And that is, there's a very big difference between Rab Shimon Bar Yochai and the Eibishter. How so? Rab Shimon Bar Yochai is limited, Basar Adam, as great as he was. And the Eibishter is safe. So when Rab Shimon Bar Yochai is flattered, they're bringing forward a potential, a characteristic which exists in Rab Shimon Bar Yochai in a hidden way, but it's part of his finite character or substance, and because it's part of his finite character and substance, that particular aspect already existed in a very deeply hidden state before they called him. But by HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kvayachal, says Hashem as ain't safe. Before you call him Chacham and Chastan, it doesn't exist at all, and by calling it forward, you're making it exist. In other words, even though we have a mashal of Rab Shimon Bar Yochai and a nimshal of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they're not the same. In the mashal of Shimon Bar Yochai, the koyach exists behelim before you call him by the name, and you're simply revealing a koyach. And in the Eibishter Kvayachal, before you call him by his name, it's not even a yachelis. And by calling it forward, you're revealing the yachelis, which is even higher. And this is the mashal of Shemes, right? In the previous paragraph, the top of page Reish Peiches, we gave a mashal by your name, your Shem Atay, your name, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and so on. And now we're going to refine that to the idea of calling Hashem a Chacham and a Chastan, that before you call him a Chacham and a Chastan, the idea of Chachma and Chesed exists in him in the Madrega of Yecheles, or even higher than that. So let's read the second paragraph of Page Reish Peiches. V'hinei, K'mei shehu b'negei l'shem ha'adam, as it is true about the general name of a person. Your Shem ha'atzmi, Reuven Shimon. Al derech zeh, the same is also true b'negei l'shemes hateyar v'amayla, names that describe specific attributes and good qualities that you may possess. For example, the Shehekdemu l'adam b'shem chacham chasam. You call a man wise or kind. Ukiyetza b'zeh. Al yedei shrachim eila, through these praise, me'ederim eskeach ha'chachma v'ha'chesed shabeh, you wake up the potential for wisdom and kindness within the person. Sheyumshachu me'ahelam, they should come forward from a hidden state, elagile, to a revealed state. Okamavu abateira'ed, like it says in Teira'ed. Ubakama derushim, and many other Maamar. There's a sphere, there's a gnuz, there's a mesashemes. The 10 hidden spheres, like 10 names. Just like Reuven is your entire name, there is a level in the Pshitas of Ein Seif where Chochmah is a name and Bina is a name. Now, if you would meet Ein Seif, you would meet oneness, because that's what Ein Seif is. Pashir b'takas apshitas. But this Ein Seif has a possibility for infinite variety, infinite specific midas. But in the Pshitas of Ein Seif, that infinity is part of the Pshitas. When you call him Chacham, you're not creating anything. You're simply identifying the aspect of Chochmah, the Yecheles for Chochmah, as a part of the Pshitas of Ein Seif. But by calling him Chacham, you're revealing, you're creating the possibility for that aspect of the Ein Seif to come forward. Sha'idei akriya bahem, when you call the Eibishter Chacham or Chastan and so on, Tiyas havas spheres, it creates spheres. V'hainu, what does this mean? The Gesha'ol lo b'teni yizbarach havas spheres, when the Eibishter in his Pshitus decided to create spheres, hetzil tchilas harashemes. The first step of creating spheres of the Eibishter emanated 10 names. But you see, when you say that the Eibishter has 10 names, he doesn't have 10 names. He has only possibility for names. The names are actualized only when we use them. Shekolam and Yanam Hurak, their entire reality is nothing more than the Kasha Yikru Oise Yizbarech Be'echad Mishem Eseileh. When we will call number one of these names, Tishava Oz, our referencing how in the Pshitas of Ein Seif there's Chachmar Chesed, will cause a manifesting or a merging or a forming Al Yedei HaKriya, by our calling him by that name, Oisa Sfira, that Sfira, Hashayachas L'Shem Zeh, connected to that name. And there it says in the bracket, when you call the Pshitas of Ein Seif wise, to have a Sfiras HaChochma in the Pshitas of Ein Seif, there's the emergence of the possibility for wisdom. When you call them kind, to have a Sfiras HaChesed, it emerges in the Pshitas of Ein Seif, the possibility for Chesed. Bedugmas ha'adam, just like it's by a person. And again, going back to the story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai that I mentioned, when you call the person wise and kind, you bring forward the wisdom and the kindness within the person, Ella. But there's a difference between a person and the Eibush. There's a difference between Ashbi and Ein Seif. Sheba Adam, by a person, you call the person wise or kind, he was already wise, he was already kind, potentially. Hashem created him that way. In other words, he's limited, and his limit has a specific definition, which includes wisdom and kindness. So you're only revealing an existent potential. But the Eibishter is different, because the Eibishter is Taka Ein Seif. And therefore, the Kriyas Hashem is by calling him by these names, Nasa Etzem Etzias Spheres. That's the beginning of the spheres. Because until you call it by the name, Hashem has infinite possibilities. Included in infinite possibilities is also the possibility for Chochmah. Before you called him Chochmah, Chochmah is a part of infinity. After you call him Chochmah, Chochmah is still part of infinity, but at least it's been identified. And in that identification, there is a possibility for something specific, that before that identification, there was just a general possibility for infinite possibilities. And again, classically, that's a difference between the level of shame, that would be the higher level, and shame is, which would be the lower level. The Kedem Akriya, before he's called by that name, Lo Hayu Sfiras Klal, the Sfiras don't exist, Gamle Behelim, in any kind of hiddenness. Al Derech Hamshocha, Shadei Kriyas Shem HaAdam, just like the name of a person, before he's called by that name. Shenifne Keshekedem Eisei Bishmei, Shekol Mitziyusa Nases, the entire reality of that name emerges, Adi Akriya B'Shem, when you use it. For Lefnei Akriya, before you call him by that name, Lo Hayu Behelim, it wasn't even hidden. And that's the Moshe of Esesfiras Hagnuzis. So the Rebbe Rashab does a build-up, if you will. He starts off by saying, number one, you cannot speak about Esesfiras Hagnuzis as a Metzias of Sfiras, because Gnuzis, Esesfiras Hagnuzis is a Metzias Hagnuzis. And he continues to speak about Sfiras Hagnuzis with a Metzias Hagnuzis, but the way it's the Madrega of Koyach. And then higher than that, there's the idea of Esesfiras Hagnuzis, which is a Metzias Hagnuzis Klal, which is the Madrega of Yechelis. That when the Eibishter decided to create a world, he decided to make it possible for Sfiras to emerge from him. When the Eibush decided to make Sfiras emerge from him, that is the beginning of Sfiras that are going to emerge from him in actuality. Now, I'm going to finish now, but I just want to tell you what's going to happen next week. This idea that when the Eibush decided that Sfiras should be able to emerge from him as the beginning of Sfiras Hagnuzis is the Chitzonius level. In other words, in some way, those Sfiras already exist within the Yechelis. The Pnimius level is based on what we're going to impress on that Ein Seif. And as the Rebbe would often say in his Fabrengenischen, Ukefi Sheyizbaya Lekama. We'll get back to the Mitzvah Hashem next time.